As I look across the room, I think most of us know one another. We are trustees. I'm not a trustee, but we have trustees in the room. We have colleagues of the Aspen Institute in the room. We have fellows. We have members of the McNulty family in the room. This is really a celebration of fellowship, inasmuch as it's a celebration of our awarding for the 11th year the John P. McNulty Prize. So thank you for being here for this momentous occasion. Ann Welsh McNulty, Bren, Johnny, and Kevin conceived this prize to honor John McNulty, to recognize his own legacy of leadership, his investment in individuals, his investment in ideas. If you know anything about Ann McNulty, you know that having ideas is not enough. It's thinking about how do you scale those ideas? How do you have impact, meaningful impact, not just in the communities in which you live, but in the larger community in which we all possess? And so one of the greatest ventures at the Aspen Institute was when Ann and Kevin and Johnny conceived of this great prize and partnered with the Aspen Institute to create this wonderful John P. McNulty Prize. And the idea was to give full manifestation to this idea that we live at and with at the Aspen Institute, and that's how do you move thought to action? And so in this wonderful, Keith Berwick is here, who's the father of us all. Keith and Ben once had this wonderful phrase, and it was the intergalactic universe of the just. And Ann was interested in helping to empower this intergalactic universe of the just so that we could make global impact. And so Ann and the McNultys, thank you so much for this investment, for this wonderful partnership. And sometimes pictures are better than words, and so we have a great film, and then I would like to invite Ann to come to the podium to make some comments.
My mom used to always encourage me to ask why. Why couldn't we help each other to succeed? I think I'm still asking why.
I think each of us, at the end of the day, want to feel like we have done something that has made a difference.
We couldn't wait. We had to start something.
For me, leadership is about taking people to a better place that they wouldn't have gone to on their own.
If we don't do this, we're not sure anyone else will.
For me, it's much more than a job, than an initiative or a project. It's my goal.
We're looking at a very human level, impacting individual lives.
I can't imagine a higher calling.
When you show that the impossible is possible, you inspire people to take further action.
We are all bound to each other. We are a part of a common humanity.
Thank you so much. Good evening and welcome, everyone. That film is always so inspiring to me. There are so many wonderful stories, and it has been a great history for us. All of us here tonight, I think, are here because we do want to see a more just and a less divided world. Now, many times when people say we need to be less divided, what they really mean is to be quieter. But in fact, if we want to lessen division truly, we have to be loud. Now, this prize is about recognizing courageous individuals, individuals who are speaking up about injustice and inequality. Now, as my family and John's family know, my husband John never had trouble speaking up, and that was mostly a good thing. But it was something he picked up from his own life experience. You know, the ability to see each person's value and potential regardless of their background, and to recognize the need to speak up when needed. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because of the degree of vitriol we have experienced in recent times. And I remembered this story, which is actually from 20 years ago. John at that time was the head of the Goldman Sachs Investment Management Division. And every year, Goldman would have this wonderful dinner, black tie dinner, which was just for the partners. And that particular year, there was a new partner in John's division. And this partner was the first openly gay partner admitted to the partnership at Goldman Sachs. And he, naturally enough, said that he wanted to bring his companion, a male, to the dinner. And the organizers' dinner said no, that was not within the policy. Now, of course, John hated double standards, and he hated exclusion. So his response to the people organizing the dinner tells you a lot about his values and also his persuasive power. So he went to one of his favorite tactics, which is trying to convince them that, in fact, they already agreed with his point of view. What if I had recently lost my wife, he said, and I wanted to bring my daughter? Oh, well, of course, yes, that would be tough. Of course that would be okay. So he said, okay, well, what if I was single? I was unattached, but I was so grateful to my mother who had really helped me get to where I am today. So he said, well, that's a little weird, but yes, that would probably be okay. So John, of course, pressed on and said, well, so basically what you're telling me is that there is not a rule that you have to bring your spouse. That what you're telling me is that each person gets to bring the person most important to them, except for this one guy. Okay, so they knew they were losing the battle here, but he went on to say, now I know you're going to make the right decision, but I just want you to know that if this guy can't bring his companion, then neither I nor any other partner in the investment management division is going to attend the dinner. And you will have to explain to everyone why none of us are there. Now, of course, John had not consulted any of the other partners in the investment management division, and I am sure they would have been horrified had they heard of this. But in the end, as you would guess, they changed the policy. And in fact, they felt very good about the fact that they were so open-minded in their approach to this policy. So in this instance, and many, many others, bias and unfairness were crystal clear to John. He had an instinctual response to exclusion. And I think he may have learned that as a child. John's father, Charlie, was orphaned at the age of 12 in rural Donegal, Ireland, and he had to drop out of school and go to work to provide for his siblings at age 12. He later emigrated to the United States and worked as a baggage handler and as a landscaper, and his wife, Nora, worked as a housekeeper, ironically, for an investment banker. It's really, the wonderful classic American immigrant story, although in recent times, you might hear people describe it as actually the story of uneducated laborers coming to take American jobs. Now, John, who grew up with his 5 siblings in a row house in southwest Philadelphia, was able to see clearly all the ways in which he was lucky, the ways in which his father was not. John knew that all kinds of smart, talented, hardworking people really never got to achieve their full potential. Now, John was not a humble guy. Those of us who knew him can certainly attest to that. But he did have one kind of humility he had in spades, and that was the understanding that he could have been born as anybody on this planet, as his father, and that success does not mean superiority. So it's the kind of humility that gives each of us the strength to resist bigotry and the strength to speak up when someone else mutters or even shouts things like, "Go back to your country." So this is our 11th year of giving the prize in John's name. And my children and I are always so inspired by the McNulty Prize laureates. Now, our laureates, in fact, are not quiet. They are loud. They are outspoken in their conviction to remove the obstacles which stand in the way of opportunity and promise. So, I am very pleased to bring my daughter Bryn to the stage, who will tell you more about the laureates.
I had actually never heard that story. So, as my mom mentioned, this is the 11th year, and last year we celebrated 10 years of the McNulty Prize. 10 years of elevating the kind of courageous leadership that she just spoke of. And in that time, we've recognized 44 laureates, and we're thrilled to have some of them here with us tonight. Bill Bynum, Brett Jenks, Dele Olajede, Casey Hardin, and Amy Crockett. Would you guys please stand? To give you a sense of the power of the laureates, these 5 alone have improved financial inclusion in the United States rural South, built sustainable fisheries and communities around the world, launched investigative journalism in Nigeria, demobilized gangs in Panama, and reduced health disparities for women in South Carolina. These and all of our laureates are lifting up millions of people around the world. We are so proud of the change that McNulty Prize laureates have created, and we're so excited to have another exceptional group of leaders join the community this year. So, our 2018 McNulty Prize laureates are Govind Ithiraj, Dave Gilboa, and Hope Azeda. Congratulations to this year's 2018 laureates. Govind couldn't be here tonight, so I will share a little bit about his work. One of the most difficult and urgent issues we are facing today is the phenomenon of fake news and the spread of misinformation, whether deliberate or not. So after spending 25 years as a business journalist, Govind created 3 media ventures to address this trend: India Spend, Boom, and Fact Checker. These 3 ventures help debunk misinformation and fact-check politicians, and have been recognized by Facebook, among others, as key partners to improve transparency. Govind's firms distribute to over 400 news outlets and millions of daily readers. This multifaceted approach is improving the quality of public discourse in India, the world's largest democracy, and as such is a crucial example to the world. Now, I'd like to invite Dave Gilboa, Henry Crowd Fellow and co-CEO of Warby Parker, to come to the stage and tell us about Pupils Project.
Thank you, and a huge thank you to the McNulty family. I feel extremely honored to be here. And I see a number of glasses wearers out in the crowd, hopefully some Warby Parker wearers among you. If any of you are like me, as someone who's worn glasses since I was 12 years old, you can't imagine living a single day without a pair of glasses, yet uncorrected vision is the single largest, single most prevalent disability among school children in the US, and there are over 2 million children in schools across the country that suffer from this disability. In New York City, one of the wealthiest cities in the world, over 200,000 children in public schools alone suffer from vision disability. And many of these children are really left behind. Some of them are misdiagnosed with learning disabilities. Many of them just become disengaged in school, negatively impacting their academic, social, and future economic earning potential. And there was a recent study that showed that third graders who were not able to effectively read had a dropped out of school at a rate 4 times of those who were proficient in reading. And so we started Pupils Project as a venture within Warby Parker to go into schools, administer free eye exams and free glasses to any child that needs them. We have programs in New York City and Baltimore where we've partnered with mayor's offices, great partners like Vision to Learn and Johns Hopkins to address this massive need. And we had our team specifically design glasses for these children that they can select, which are designed for children in their styles and in colors that they want to wear, because as we've seen across ages and demographics, fashion matters. And now 3 years in, we've screened over 300,000 children, have provided over 80,000 eye exams, distributed over 70,000 pairs of prescription glasses, and so we're starting to make a dent in this big issue, but there's still so much that we have to do, and can't wait for the day when every child in America who needs glasses has access to them.
Thank you, Dave. Now please welcome Hope Azeda, founder and curator of the Ubuntu Arts Festival in Rwanda. Did I say it right? Kind of.
Children are not born racist. They are not born to hate. Somewhere down the line, someone lets them down, and that someone is an adult. I was born and raised as a refugee, but I was amazed by how my own mother taught me how to love, despite the fact that we are refugees. The conditions were not good. So when I went back to Rwanda after the 1994 genocide, I was hit by the fact that 1 million people had been killed in just 100 days. Up to this day, I've never known the mathematics around this whole act. So I went back as an artist and started using art as a weapon of change. So 4 years back, I created the Ubuntu Arts Festival. Ubuntu means humanity. So it's a platform we created to bring back the humanness that had slipped out of our world in that particular period. The festival takes place at a genocide memorial where 250,000 innocent souls are buried. I'm so honored that today, as I speak, at least 34 countries have come to Rwanda. And art as alone has given us the skills to talk about the unspeakable. Art has given us the power, has given us the language. Because where words fail us, art is always alive. But most importantly, I'm very, very thankful to the artists that have crossed borders and just come to support this festival. I cannot go away from this platform without thanking Megan. Megan, please stand up. Megan is a lighting designer from New York. She learned about the festival 4 years back. I didn't know Megan. Megan just sent an email and said, I want to come and help and light the festival. I told her I don't have money. She said, I don't need money. I just want to come and work with the people. She's been coming for 4 years, every year, training people. So there's also Kaneza, there's Zakaya. They all bring works to the festival. But the works they bring evoke conversations that we don't usually have in our daily lives. And this is the power of this festival. It has helped us to heal, but it also has helped us to bring children in this space. I want to thank the McNulty family for accepting me in your space. I still don't have words to explain how I'm even standing here. But here I am, because I am because you are. You are because I am.
Thank you very much, Hope. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Bryn. I'm Johnny McNulty, and I have the privilege tonight of introducing the winner of the 2018 McNulty Prize, Mehrdad Baghai, who co-founded High Resolves with his wife, Roya, also here tonight. One of my favorite tropes in literature, especially fantasy, is the idea that there are things in the world, whether they be fairies or magic doors or what have you, that children can see clearly, but adults lose the power to perceive. because we get so used to expecting what we should see that anytime there's something different, our brains just paint over it. As anyone here knows who has ever debated an idealistic teen or had a small child ask them a socially loaded question in public, young people are incapable of ignoring society's awkwardness and hypocrisy. They will ask, why doesn't someone just give the homeless houses? Why is there only one person of color in our neighborhood? You know, questions that don't really have answers. What if, instead of an invitation by owl from Hogwarts, those kids got an invitation to keep that vision? That is what High Resolves does for its students. It doesn't invite them to be wizards, but it invites them to be something just as transformative. Citizens who retain not just the ability to ask awkward questions in public, but the inability to be quiet about it. High Resolves was founded 13 years ago, not just on idealism, but on tools of behavioral science, so that hundreds of thousands of youths can practice, strengthen, and keep for a lifetime that youthful allergy to injustice. Now, before we meet Mehrdad, let's watch this short film.
I grew up in Iran in the 1970s. I was a young Baha'i, and Baha'is are a persecuted minority in Iran. I remember my mother and sister both being vilified and hated. The impact that had on me was to recognize the injustice of the system. It wasn't that people were born hateful. It was that society was training people to discriminate against them. We can actually train people to be positive members of society. The only question is, how do you do that? When I was a student at Harvard, I was working on simulations as a research tool. What we wanted to do was understand how humans made choices. Whether I was working at McKinsey or co-writing this book around collective action, I've been thinking about this for a long time. In some ways, what High Resolves is doing is inoculating people against hatred and division. And what it's doing is giving them capabilities to build a better future. The one instruction for this game is for you to find your people. The way we have to approach that is through some kind of powerful learning experience where people viscerally understand how their own individual choices create vastly different collective outcomes. Simulations get young people to change how they think about something. But what you have to do is you have to follow it up with lots of additional work in the classroom. They form a much richer understanding of, say, race or collective identity or justice. And that new understanding will shift to long-term memory, which means it's becoming a habit. It's going to be the way they approach the world in the future.
America is really polarized right now. High Resolves allow our students to be able to have conversations that are difficult. Those interactions really help shape who they are.
What High Resolves really left me with is the attitude of you can. You can change the world if you put your mind to it.
Put your hands up if you want to put in 100%.
I was trying to figure out who I was, what I liked, what I thought was important in society. High Resolves taught me how to approach situations where there's evidence of inequality and that I can, in my own capacity, make a difference.
Part of the High Resolves learning process is to take what you've learned in school and apply it in some kind of real-world setting.
We tried to tackle the issue of youth homelessness. In another world, I could have been in the exact same situation. I wanted them to feel safe and for them to know that, somebody had their backs.
I get really excited when I watch the change in the trajectory of a young person's life.
Without High Resolves, I wouldn't have been interested in going into politics. learn how we can shape policy for people who really need it.
What makes me hopeful is that I can see the change happen with one person. And then you see it with dozens and hundreds and thousands. We lift the trajectory of people's lives and point them towards what they were meant to do on this planet.
Mehrdad, on behalf of my family, I am thrilled to present you, Roya, and High Resolves with the 2018 John P. McNulty Prize.
Well, thank you so much. Johnny, thank you for that brilliant description of our program. It feels to me that hate is the pandemic of our generation. We need to inoculate as many people as we possibly can against this, especially the younger generation. And really, that's what we created High Resolves to do. And I think, as we'll find out in the conversation that's coming, I think we've proven that we can do it. And I think our challenge now is to just take it as far and wide as we possibly can, because we all certainly know how much the world needs it. So I think this is where Aspen is uniquely qualified to make a difference. In many ways, the Aspen Global Leadership Network is an amplifier of impact. And we've already seen that in our work. So Aspen was not just the catalyst for this, but I think it can be part of the solution for how this can have a much bigger impact on the planet. So I'm really thrilled, and Anne, I wanted to thank you, your whole family, April, Nina, and the whole McNulty team, who are just the most brilliant group ever to work with. I want to thank the Aspen Institute for making this possible. Roya and I are both incredibly honored to be here, very touched, and in many ways rejuvenated and refueled. This work is tiring work, but it's impossible to be in this situation in this room and not walk away with just that much more fuel to go on and do the battle that we do. As you all know, this is the sort of work that's not just what one person does. And I do want to recognize some of the folks who are here and otherwise have helped this happen. And I feel particularly fortunate tonight that 3 of the most important mentors in my life are here. So David Wilkins from Harvard Law School, Dick Foster from my days at McKinsey, and Keith Berwick, who was really the inspiration and grandfather in many ways, spiritual grandfather of High Resolves. The 3 of you have meant a lot to me, and it's really, I'm very touched that you've made the effort to be here. I do want to also thank, I have a lot of friends who've flown from far and wide, collaborators who've come here, Dado from Brazil, Nan from London, and Mehran from Sydney. And then there's others from closer who are here, who've helped. My Henry Klein classmates are all helping to take this around the world. Jay into Philadelphia, Dado into Brazil, Nikki and Jack, Stephen helping it in the United States. We have my close friends Shane and Mona who are helping us, and Manoj Kumar who's helping take it to India. It's a long list. And I just wanted to mention those names because these sorts of things don't happen with just 1 or 2 people. Friends and collaborators are really important. And then there's also the team. We have the hardest working, most passionate, most amazing group of people in the High Resolves family. And it's growing, and I just could not be more proud of what they all do. They show up, they work
their hearts out every day. And some of you may not be aware of some of the things that happen in schools on a day-to-day basis, but the courage that they show to stand up and do the work is just remarkable. And of course, it would not be complete for me to not thank Roya, because she is my mentor, my friend, my partner in everything, my collaborator. High Resolves would not exist without her, so please stand. And thank you.
We are so excited that Dan Porterfield is here tonight to moderate this evening's conversation. Oh, sorry. Dan was president of Franklin and Marshall College for 7 years before joining the Institute this June as president and CEO. His career has been rooted in the expression of value-based leadership and the pursuit of equity and justice that our work and the prize seeks to celebrate. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Mehrdad. Thank you. Well, hey, everybody, it's great to be here. Let me start by saying thank you again to the McNulty family, to all the colleagues at the Aspen Institute who are here, who work on the leadership programs, who are mentors to our leaders, who bring them together under the Aspen Global Leadership Network, who do things like run the finances and the facilities of the Aspen Institute, raise the funds, the big team that's here, our trustees. So please all join me in thanking the whole Aspen Institute family. Now, it's pretty cool to be here with you, and also to have a chance to see again Hope and Dave, Govind up on the screen. Are you all, what are you, like Guardians of the Galaxy or something?
Well, that's kind of what Keith called it, but yeah.
So you guys actually like hang out and talk about change making a little bit?
You know, I think it's one of the most powerful things about Aspen is to not feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
It's it's a lonely thing, and I think that to be in the company of unbelievable, when Hope was speaking, I almost lost it, which I almost always do.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to be around people like this,
yeah,
and not be, you can't help but be inspired by them.
It pretty is. One more time for Dave and Hope. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So I'm going to have 4 categories of questions for this Guardian. One's going to be about the program. The second is about you. So get ready, because they're going to be penetrating. The third is about this idea that you're a creator and you created something and grew it. What's that about, the idea of expanding the reach and the impact? And then finally, kind of what's next?
Yeah.
Now, if there's anything you want to say, just jump in and don't even worry what I ask. Just say whatever you want to say.
Okay. Will do.
So first of all, just with High Resolves, can you just one more time, what is it in a couple sentences? Where does it take place and what size does it have today?
So look, what we really try to do is design and deliver learning experiences around citizenship and leadership to young people. Now, a lot of times it happens in the school, but it doesn't have to be just in the school. It can be in camps, in faith groups, other types of things. Yeah. But what we're trying to do is get them to learn to act in the collective interest and to be vaccinated, if you want, inoculated against some of the negative, corrosive ideologies of society.
Yeah, and so it started in Australia, is that right?
Yeah, we started 13 years ago in Sydney.
Yeah, and so now, though, it's spreading, like a virus. A good virus.
Well, a good one.
A good virus, exactly.
So, yeah, 200,000 kids in Australia over the last decade or so. And we've just got up in North America, in Toronto, New Orleans, Oakland, starting in Minneapolis and Philly, and then Brazil, India, China, and so on.
And a lot of its scaling is happening because of your personal network through a range of your experiences, but also, especially the Aspen experience.
Yeah, particularly Aspen.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Thank you so much. All right, so is there a secret sauce here? Are you doing something in this program that others haven't known to do or tried to do?
Well, I mean, I think one of the most important things is shifting the mental models that young people have in their heads about abstract concepts like justice.
Yeah.
So you sort of say, well, how do you do that? Well, so imagine 60 kids walk into a gym, and we're trying to get them to think about justice, right? So the way that happens is we'll take something really practical. Like 6 of them will get together, and they'll see a range of images around what dental hygiene means on the planet. Yeah. So on one end, you've got someone brushing their teeth with a twig, a bit of grit on the finger, toothpaste on a finger, toothbrush that's shared by a whole family, an individualized toothbrush, and then all the way to the end is the Braun Ultrasonic 6000.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so the question for the students, as they look at that distribution curve, is where would you draw the line if you didn't know who you were going to be? Right. And so if they say that I think the minimum standard is an individualized toothbrush, well, then we know how many billions of people are below that standard, and what obligation do we have from a justice point of view to those folks. So that's powerful because when that student goes home that night or the next morning and is brushing their teeth, they're going to think about this. Yeah. So they're beginning to learn what justice means.
This sounds like something John Rawls wrote about.
It's exactly John Rawls. That's exactly
Pretty cool. So he's not just an organizer, he's a thinker. I'm sure of that. In fact, there was probably years of idea formulation that led to this, but we'll get to that. Yeah. So, okay, so that's the sort of the secret sauce of it, I guess. It sounds incredibly relatable, which is very important to kids. But then it becomes like a habit. You're trying to create this habit, like brushing teeth, a habit. So is that right?
That's absolutely right. So, I mean, it's one thing for you to have this new idea about, justice or independent thinking or whatever, but for it to become really something that happens automatically by reflex, there has to be repeated practice. Yeah. So take independent thinking as an example. So how do you practice a different version of it? Again, we want to be interactive, so we'll take a classroom of, say, 25 kids, split them into two teams. Team Berry Bunga and Team Berry Shock. Now, the Berry Bunga folks want to sell more Berry Bunga. It's an energy drink. And the Berry Shock people want to sell more of their drink. We give them a fact sheet, and the students don't realize it's the same fact sheet. But what they'll do to put a 30-second pitch together is the Berry Bunga team will pick all the facts that are favorable to Berry Bunga, and the Berry Shock team take all the facts that are favorable to Berry Shock, and they'll pitch it. Now, that is a very powerful way for students to realize, you know what? People out there might be very selective in what facts they're telling me. Yeah. And it's up to me to make sure I'm getting a broader set of facts to understand it. So you have to do that maybe 6, 7, 8 times until it becomes something that is really habitual.
And then ultimately the plan then is that they then start to act on it in their daily life.
Well, so until they do that, the confidence doesn't come. I mean, it's one thing for kids to understand something in the walls of a classroom, but to then take it and whether it's through making a video or a social action project, to put it into practice in a real setting, then they get the confidence to actually do it in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, so this must involve coaching, mentoring. What do you have to have around these young people so that they can really get the experience?
Well, more than anything, they actually can provide a lot of that coaching and mentoring to each other. Yeah. And a lot of the work we do is in teams. Students, will play different roles, and they'll help each other through that. I think they actually get more confidence from peers than they do from adults or teachers.
That's a good point. Yeah, they own it. It's theirs. What was it like? Do you remember the first time you ever did it? A workshop on this?
Absolutely. So I invented the game in 1988. Yeah. And the very first time I did it was at the Kennedy School. It was actually not at a younger school. And it was a disaster. Yeah. It was.
Is that what you were speaking about on the video?
No, I mean, these things, it's kind of funny. People think these simulations come together really quickly. I have to tell you, it takes iteration after iteration to get one of these things to work with kids. So you have to do it almost like 20, 30 times before you get the nuances right.
Yeah, it's like parenting.
Yeah.
So it must be hard to demonstrate results when what you're doing is inoculating. You're not even changing thinking. You're preventing the thoughts from ever creeping in there. How do you think about results and outcomes?
Well, so that's a very good point, right? So the things that the biggest contribution we make is the stuff that doesn't happen. And so it would be hard to measure that. But what we can measure, and what we are absolutely confident that we have in terms of impact, is there is a change in the trajectory of students' lives as they go through this program. And we know that there's also a change in school culture. And we know that because our principals tell us that High Results is an absolute pillar of their schools. And the schools where we've been in there for 8 years, 9 years or so, there is an improvement in almost every indicator in the school, from test scores to truancy to bullying, all kinds of things.
Yeah, and I mean, school providers, school leaders, teachers, they know. They're not going to let you in there if you're not adding value.
And, we also do a Net Promoter Score. And the latest Net Promoter Score we had from principals and teachers was a 60. Yeah. For those who don't know the scale, it's a customer satisfaction scale. Apple scores a 60, Lexus is a 62. Most companies would be happy to be at a 30.
Yeah.
So for us, we know that our customers like what we're doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, that's where you sort of have gotten to at this point. But you mentioned that you did a simulation, or your first one was in 1988. And so all this doesn't come out of just nothing. It comes out of a life history, a story. I was very compelled to see little Mehrdad, and also to see, yes, and little Mehrdad, and saw your mom. So maybe say a little bit about your childhood and how any experiences that are relevant that helped you to come up with this idea.
So look, Baha'is are called najas in Iran. Najas basically means untouchable and unclean. And so there were memories I have, for example, going into a swimming pool and then other parents telling their children not to go into that pool because it was no longer clean. Yeah. Or people touching me with the rubber tip of a pencil because if they had any physical contact, that would not. So that was the culture. And I think it's hard to understand or fathom what that means. And as a child, as an 8-year-old, you don't understand it. To me, it was like, well, they're wrong.
Yeah.
I was never. But in retrospect, as you come, you think about it, and you think, society should not have this. This is like, why do we allow? Because these are not bad people. These were not horrible people. These were good people. Why is it easy for good people to believe that other people should be hated?
Yeah.
That became the central question for me, and I just wanted to understand that, and then eventually I stumbled upon how we might fix it.
Okay, so go to that for a second. Why do good people find themselves hating?
Yeah, so I think if you look at, there's core things around citizenship education that we are not teaching. People aren't learning. And so they're missing the faculties they need that are essentially defenses against this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So independent thinking is one example of a really important faculty. I don't understand why we would expect anyone to get through the education process and not be an independent thinker.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But we have to do that in a powerful way so that, as they encounter messages that are propaganda or they're hate speech or they're divisive, that they recognize it. Yeah. Now, we have students that run around in schoolyards, and our teachers tell us, today I was there, and I noticed that Jenny said to the others that that's divisive. Don't use that language. So people, once you train them, people, and particularly young people, their brains at that age are able to unlearn these things and to pick up new ideas pretty quickly.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of how much time needs to be spent when you're younger in this?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So, I think a lot of schools we found think that they can solve these things by ticking, let's do a workshop on this, and we'll do a workshop on this, and that 2 hours is going to, 2 hours does nothing.
Yeah.
So let's be clear with each other. I mean, we're talking about 100 experiences over the span of, say, 2 to 6 years, depending on how much you want to do it. It is a lot of work to actually be able to do this in a comprehensive and effective way.
Yeah, and so among other things, you have to convince adults that it's worth the time, that it will work, or even that it's a value to try to instill.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a part of your background that led to this, and there's probably a lot more to say, a lot more to learn about what you and your family dealt with, and you're obviously honoring your community through this work. But you also had one of the best educations a human being can get on the planet Earth. Princeton, Harvard. So did your education have anything to do also with this?
Well, I was very fortunate. I mean, I think as with most immigrant families, education is the #1 priority. And I think I was very fortunate to have that. I worked with a professor at the Kennedy School named Tom Schelling, who went on to win the Nobel Prize in economics. And really, Tom was excited about using games to understand how people made choices.
Yeah.
And we use these games really as a research tool. But I discovered that when you do these simulations, it actually changes the way people think.
Yeah.
It was actually a highly effective pedagogical tool, but just in the 1980s, experiential learning was not something people believed in.
Yeah. So the idea is that if you do something, it will change your thought process.
Yeah.
You won't know your thought process is even necessarily changing. It will just form you.
And you can be even more precise.
Yeah.
It's if you are facing a moral choice of some sort, you make that choice, you reflect on what the consequences of that choice were, that loop is what rewires the brain in terms of moral education.
Yeah. Wow, it's extraordinary. Okay, so you were in grad school. What were you studying where you were exposed to Professor Schilling?
So I was at the Kennedy School doing an MPP and at the law school doing a JD.
He's an economist, so was he in the, he wasn't in the law school. So
no, he was in the Kennedy School.
He was in the Kennedy School. Did your legal education play a role here too, or no?
Well, I think in terms of growing high resolves, it certainly has helped having had a legal education.
Yeah.
Not as much in terms of the content of the curriculum.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a second big, giant formative experience, all this great education. And then you had another kind of education when you went to work for McKinsey. And you know, so say a little bit about that and how, and you thanked some mentors from McKinsey. So you know, how did that help to make this happen?
Well, so I had McKinsey is an amazing place for learning. And it was just an amazing experience. And early in my McKinsey career, I had a project where we had to cut 10,000 jobs. And I decided I did not want to have anything to do with that. After I finished it, I resigned.
Yeah.
The person who was the managing partner in Toronto took my letter and said, look, before you do this, I'd like you to meet Dick Foster, sitting in the back of the room. Yeah. And Dick is trying to do some work on growth. Why don't you start and see if you could work with Dick a little bit. I said, I'll try it for 3 months, and that'll be my way out. And of course, Dick changed my life because I ended up studying nothing but growth. Growth became 28% of McKinsey revenues globally by 2000 when I left. And running the growth practice at McKinsey with a couple of my friends was just one of the most amazing aspects of my life.
Okay, so forgive my ignorance, but what does it mean, growth?
So, you know, it's all around how do you choose strategies for growth, but even more importantly, how do you design organizations to be able to scale?
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting things in the not-for-profit sector, which I'm now experiencing, is that people have great ideas, but we don't spend nearly as much time thinking about the mechanics of what it takes to actually have efficient scaling.
Yeah.
So part of what I've tried to bring to High Resolves is some of the lessons from all the research I did at McKinsey, what I wrote about, around how do you organize for rapid growth.
You know, one of the exciting things about tonight, too, is that the Aspen Institute has lots of programs that in different ways invest in these extraordinary high-talent creators and help them build the skill sets to take the next jump. Rick Braddock is here, and he has a program. It's called the Braddock Scholars. It's all about that, about teaching people with great ideas the real skills, whole different set of skills in scaling something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what you learned at McKinsey, especially.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it was in a private sector context, but the tools are totally relevant.
So somewhere in that McKinsey experience, you heard about the Henry Crown program and were nominated for it or tracked down or recruited for it or applied for it. And so what did that experience give you? And you may have to explain for the group a little bit, what is the Henry Crown program?
So the Henry Crown program is the brainchild of Keith Berwick, who is the spiritual father to many, many of us. And really, I got a call in 2005 from Keith because Charles Kahn, another Henry Crown fellow, had nominated me. And so it's a program, you go for 3 years, and it allows you, with a group of 20 people, to really think about what are the things that your life has been about and what is it that you want to do that is significant in society.
Yeah.
When Keith called, I sort of said, I don't think this is right for me because I have no idea what I want to do next. And Keith said, actually, that's why it's right for you. Yeah. And so when I joined the Henry Crown Fellowship, one of the things that Keith did is opened up the role of, the possibility of clean sheet redesign of my life.
Yeah.
And that's when I actually rethought what were the contributions I wanted to make. Roya and I began a one-year conversation around what we wanted to do as a family.
Yeah.
And High Resolves was born out of that.
So the Henry Crown Fellowship, the fellows, about 20 or so
in a class,
and you get together multiple times over 18 months, and they're intense.
They're incredibly intense.
Multiple days.
Yeah.
Deep reading, reflection, a conversation with each other, a conversation with texts, just never stops.
A lot of people, look at, so, on the surface, you're reading the great works, the great paragraphs, you're having conversations about them, but really what's happening is you're forging some of the most powerful friendships of your entire life.
Yeah.
And these are 19 people with whom you will go to war on anything together. They will back you no matter what. You know all the ups and downs of each other's life, from health issues to marriage changes to, everything that's going on is shared in this circle of trust.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine being here today without the support I've had from my classmates.
Yeah, it's an incredible program. And for those that may not know, the Aspen Institute has 14 of these types of programs. Henry Crown Fellowship is the first. And as a result, we have about 300 Mehrdads and Hopes and Daves a year who are completing their 18-month experience. Each of them, like these three, transformed in some way as a leader to take the next step in life, whatever that might be. And we're figuring out, with the leadership of David Langstaff, who oversees our leadership programs, who's here tonight, and Margot Pritzker, who's our board chair of the leadership programs committees, what more we can do so that these great leaders, 3 here, so times 1,000 in our pool of graduates, what more can we do to make an impact on this planet with their talent and with the extraordinary platform that the Aspen Institute provides? Pretty incredible. It's a resource that could benefit, in untold ways, communities everywhere. Okay, so you finished the Henry Crown program, and most fellows have a venture of some type, and this was the venture. But I really love that you mentioned Roya. So it's your venture together, and you talked this through. And would you just say a little bit about what it's like to work on a venture with the person you love most in the world?
Yeah. So actually, it's kind of funny how many people think it's a crazy idea. And to me, it was like, why is this a crazy idea? I mean, why would you want to spend less time together? I mean, if you're going to dedicate 13 years or more to doing something, wouldn't you want to spend more time with your partner in doing it? So that part was pretty obvious. I think the amazing thing is that for us is that Roya has a very complementary skill set to mine. And I think, in making this happen, a lot of the, let me call it the human side of the choices we've made around people, around what the organization's values are, what we stand for. Roy's been instrumental in that, and as an architect, someone who's designed experiences her whole life, she spends a lot of time thinking through about exactly what the experiences that students are going to go through. And that's what we've won awards for. So she's really the secret sauce.
Roya, thank you and congratulations. You're not up here, but I can't help but ask you right now, how do you feel this evening about the recognition for this?
I'm honored to be here and among such. This is a little unexpected. I'm very honored to be here, and Mehrdad is being very generous. Really, it really is among such esteemed people here. We're really grateful for everything, that the opportunities that have been given, and I get to benefit secondhand from all the Aspen experience that Mehrdad had. But yeah, it's really great to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, let's pivot for a minute. So you have this program that you and Roya together create 13 years ago. And you probably knew 13 years ago that you were just going to rock the earth with this program, right?
Hardly. So we started calling it an initiative. It was an experiment in one school. And then 5 other principals wanted it, another 10. And we funded it for the first 6, 7 years. And I think, it wasn't for 6, 7 years until we actually realized that this really had the power to do something really special.
So by we funded it, that means you just spent your money on it because you believed in it, you wanted to see where it could go. But with all that McKinsey training and all that MPP and all that stuff, you figured at some point, somebody besides the 2 of you has to pay for this if it's going to go on, right?
And I think that's really where we pivoted in the last few years to, by the time we had proven that what we had was valuable, we knew that schools would start to pay. And so we have a freemium model. Any school that can't afford it, they can take everything and apply it for free. They have training online and everything else. But if they want us to go in and do it with them, then they have to pay for the time of people. And that has basically been the model we've used in Australia. In Australia, we're a fully self-funding not-for-profit.
And there's a lot of programs in the United States of different types, like public charter schools, that have worked because their quality has been demonstrated, which gives them value, and the value needs to be paid for, and it all works when you have something you offer that others will support. Was there ever a point when you were offering it totally free, when you actually knew, like, people are going to pay for this, or were you kind of hoping?
No, I mean, we've raised prices 7 times.
And every single time we were nervous, and every single time there was no issue.
Yeah.
And so we had to develop our own confidence. I think not-for-profits need to become confident that what we do is valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that it's okay to have models that allow it to become self-funding. It doesn't have to be just grants.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, if it's just grants, you spend all that time writing grants, right? You're constantly writing and writing, competing with other people.
Yeah.
Instead of competing for impact.
Yeah.
So, this experience of scaling, there's a lot to it. I bet you that McKinsey experience was fantastic for this. And so now, starting to where you are today, do you think you want to get bigger, or is it?
Yeah. Well, look, we're mission-led.
Yeah.
So if it's about immunizing, inoculation of the world, then you have to grow.
Yeah.
So growth, everyone in our organization has taken growth as an absolute, it's non-negotiable.
Yeah. Okay, I got to stop, because that's such an important point. I really want to hear that again. They're doing great work, but it can't work at a small scale because it's essentially a public health problem that you're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
So if you don't inoculate a lot of people will start getting the virus.
Yeah.
It's like smallpox.
Yeah. And so, it's kind of interesting because the question is, well, what's critical mass?
Yeah.
Do you have to get to 90% or is 50%?
Yeah.
So our goal in Australia, we currently work with about 5% of teenagers. As the video showed, we're trying to get to about half the young population in about 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, that is a social experiment.
Yeah.
Because Australia is not too small and it's not too big.
Yeah.
But what would happen? I mean, can we all imagine a society where half the young people are trained so that they recognize hate speech, they think independently, they act for the collective interest? What does that society look like? How is it different?
Yeah.
And so if we can reach scale on that basis, we can prove something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And so is there a difference, though, between never having been exposed to hate and then the notion that hate is normal, that there's a blank slate type of person you might work with, but also somebody that actually has got all these prejudices because they've been soaked in it?
Well, look, how many of us haven't?
Yeah.
We're all soaking in it, in one way or another.
You start with the assumption they've been soaked in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you yourself, you've got a job. Like you can't just become a full-time NGO leader, or did you?
So I have my companies, and I used to spend all my time on the companies. And I think last Christmas, really, Roya and I had to stare in the mirror ourselves. And that was our moral choice. Are we all in, or are we not all in?
Yeah.
And if this is something that the world needs, then we have to be all in. And so I transitioned most of my business interests to my partners who are running it and doing incredibly well. I spend 80% of my time on high resolves on a pro bono basis.
Wow, congratulations. Wow, and how does it feel?
It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, that is amazing. Wow. So we probably only have time for another question or two. I want to look forward a little bit, where it's going, where it might go. Any thoughts about what you imagine, and you and Roya together think 5 years from now, where you might be with this?
So I guess there's two elements to that. One is just the normal geographic growth. So we hope to open the hubs in the U.S. and Canada and grow with Dotto's help and Lena's help. Grow in Brazil with Manoj in India, China, and so on. So there's the normal geographic stuff. But one of the other things I'm particularly excited about is the role that we could play in driving a change at the education sector level.
Yeah.
So in doing the work at High Resolves, we created a digital platform and a whole approach for how you can string curriculum together in order to be able to create meaningful learning experiences for schools.
Yeah.
Now, we designed that for citizenship education, and we've been doing a lot of thinking on how we might even do assessment on it. Fred Miller in the back has helped on that. And what we think we could do with that platform is make it something that's available for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
So currently, with Chan Zuckerberg funding, we've now attracted Facing History and ourselves, iCivics, Generation Citizen, and Peace First, so 4 other organizations to join us on that platform. Our goal will be to have about 30 education service providers on a single platform that would be accessible to thousands of schools by next Christmas. And that means schools would be able to piece together the best curriculum from lots of different sources in order to do this kind of citizenship education.
So scaling doesn't just happen once. You have to remake the business model, remake the structure with each significant scaling experience.
Yes, and importantly, the other thing that I think is difficult sometimes for a not-for-profit or a company is, we're High Resolves Orange. And our job is not to make everyone in the world do nothing but high results.
Yeah.
Our job is to help this growth in citizenship education take place. And there's all these other organizations that have fantastic curriculum. We want as much of that as possible to get into as many schools and other organizations as possible, and the platform will facilitate that.
And it's interesting that you haven't tried to impose a single model on everybody else. Part of your scaling logic is that it's adaptable to the culture and the environment of the place where it's happening. Is that right?
So we call ourselves a multi-local organization as opposed to a global. And as an example, in China, we train parents before we work with the kids. And in that environment, that is the way you approach it.
Exactly.
And then, some people think, well, America, it's one. Well, frankly, New Orleans and Oakland are two very different educational experiences. So we adapt locally with the local community and, frankly, at each school to see what is it that they need the most and how can they be better at doing that.
So all these fellows, they had this venture. You just inspired me to think my venture should be to bring this program to Aspen, Colorado.
Happy to do that.
One last question. You are the McNulty Prize winner, but everybody that's in it is a winner. The laureates have all won. And you've won partly because there's been some help provided by the program. And how have you benefited from being in the program? And what is it that you're getting from the program?
Do you mean the McNulty program?
The McNulty.
So, look, it is... I can't say enough things. I mean, Anne, your whole family and team are the most amazing people on the planet. And I just, so whether it's Nina and April just, doing everything in terms of the videos that you saw, we have 40 hours of footage from that film that Anne and the team have made available to us. That will become dozens of videos we'll use all over the place. Introductions to foundations. I just went to New Delhi about a month ago to give a talk. Again, April organized that. The kind of introductions, conversations that are happening, and then most of all, Lori, sitting in the front, who has helped me become comfortable with talking about my past in a public setting. And without her coaching, I wouldn't have done that. And so it is a remarkable thing that you have given to us as a gift.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much. So I would like to... So first, Roya, if I may, sitting to your left is Karen Hurling. That's my wife. Would you mind handing her your phone, which has the video running? So you could come up here with us. So can you come up here and...
Why don't you come on that side?
I just don't want this standing ovation that they're about to get to be with you standing down there. I want you to be up here. So please, everybody. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.